Canada doesn't announce its scale loudly. It reveals it slowly, almost quietly, through numbers that don't seem real until you stop and sit with them. This is a country where geography feels exaggerated, stretched beyond what most people can visualize, where water, land, climate, and emptiness all exist on a scale that reshapes your understanding of what a nation even is. When you hear that Canada holds more lakes than the rest of the world combined, or that parts of it feel closer to Mars than to civilization, it sounds like exaggeration, but it isn't. It's reality, just one that operates on a different scale entirely. Starting with water, Canada's dominance is almost overwhelming. The country contains over 2 million lakes, an estimated 60% of all the lakes on Earth. That's not just a statistic, it's a defining feature of the landscape. Entire regions are shaped more by water than by land, with lakes appearing so frequently that they become a normal part of the terrain rather than something noteworthy. And among them, Lake Superior stands out not just for its size, but for its sheer volume. It alone holds about 10% of the world's surface freshwater, a number so large it's difficult to comprehend. Standing on its shore doesn't feel like standing next to a lake. It feels like standing at the edge of an ocean that just happens to be freshwater. Then there's the coastline. Canada's coastline stretches an astonishing 151,019 miles, the longest of any country in the world. To put that into perspective, you could wrap it around the Earth multiple times. The edges of the country aren't just borders, they're vast, irregular interfaces between land and water, shaped by glaciers, tides, and time. Even Hudson Bay, which many people think of as just a large bay, has a coastline longer than that of entire countries like India. And within all this water lies another staggering fact. About 20% of the world's freshwater supply is found within Canada's borders. It's not just abundant, it's globally significant. Flowing through this landscape is the Mackenzie River, one of North America's great river systems, stretching over 2,600 miles. It cuts through remote wilderness, carrying water from the interior of the continent to the Arctic Ocean, acting as both a lifeline and a reminder of how interconnected Canada's geography really is. These waterways aren't just features, they are the structure of the country itself. But water is only part of the story. Canada's sheer size creates another layer of disbelief. It's the second largest country on Earth by total area, yet its population is smaller than that of California. That imbalance between land and people defines much of Canada's identity. Vast areas exist where human presence is minimal or non-existent, where the landscape remains largely untouched. In Nunavut, this contrast becomes even more extreme. The territory is enormous, larger than many continents' regions, yet home to only around 39,000 people. It's a place where distance isn't measured in miles between cities, but in days between settlements. At the very edge of this vastness lies Alert, located just over 500 miles from the North Pole. It's one of the most isolated inhabited places on the planet, where the environment is so extreme that even basic living requires careful planning and resilience. The idea that people live there year-round feels almost surreal, yet it's part of Canada's geographic reality. Connecting this immense country is the Trans-Canada Highway, one of the longest national highway systems in the world. Stretching thousands of miles, it links together regions that would otherwise feel completely disconnected. And because of this scale, Canada spans 6 different time zones, meaning the experience of time itself changes as you move across the country. Then comes climate and geology, where Canada becomes even more extreme. In Snag, the coldest temperature ever recorded in North America reached -63 degrees Celsius, -81.4 degrees Fahrenheit. That's not just cold, it's a level of temperature where the air itself becomes dangerous within minutes. These extremes aren't isolated incidents. They are part of a broader pattern shaped by Canada's geography. Beneath the surface lies the Canadian Shield, one of the oldest pieces of Earth's crust, dating back nearly 4 billion years. This massive geological formation covers a significant portion of the country and defines its landscape with rocky terrain, mineral richness, and countless lakes formed by ancient glacial activity. It's not just land, it's a record of Earth's deep history. On the eastern side, the Bay of Fundy showcases another extreme, the highest tides in the world, reaching up to 53 feet. Entire coastlines transform as the water rises and falls, exposing and covering vast areas in a rhythmic cycle that feels almost surreal to witness. And in Nahanni National Park Reserve, you'll find Virginia Falls, nearly twice the height of Niagara Falls, hidden deep within a remote wilderness that few people ever see. Canada's forests add yet another dimension. The boreal forest stretches across the country as the largest intact forest ecosystem on Earth, a continuous expanse of trees, wildlife, and ecosystems that play a critical role in regulating the planet's climate. It's not just vast, it's essential. And within these forests and tundras, wildlife thrives in ways that feel almost mythical. In Churchill, polar bears gather in such numbers that the town has earned the nickname the polar bear capital of the world. It's one of the few places where humans and one of the planet's most powerful predators exist in close proximity. In some northern regions, caribou populations outnumber humans, reinforcing just how lightly populated much of Canada really is. Every summer, thousands of beluga whales migrate to the mouth of the Churchill River, turning the waters white with movement. It's one of those natural events that feels almost unreal until you see it, an entire ecosystem shifting in motion. And across the country, Canada protects its landscapes through dozens of national parks and historic sites, including places like Pacific Rim National Park Reserve, where ancient temperate rainforests house trees that have stood for over 1,000 years. But it's the final set of facts, the ones that feel almost unbelievable, that truly define Canada's geographic identity. The North Magnetic Pole has long been located within Canadian territory, though it continues to drift toward Russia over time. In parts of Hudson Bay, scientists have measured a gravitational anomaly, areas where gravity is slightly weaker than elsewhere on Earth. It's a subtle effect, but a fascinating reminder that even the invisible forces of the planet behave differently here. On Devon Island, the landscape is so barren and Mars-like that NASA uses it as a testing ground for space missions. It's one of the closest environments on Earth to another planet, a place where isolation and terrain combine to create something almost extraterrestrial. And then there's the final fact, the one that feels like a paradox. Somewhere within Canada exists a geographic formation so complex it almost sounds fictional. An island within a lake, on an island within a lake, on an island. It's the most nested geographic feature on Earth, a perfect symbol of how Canada's landscape defies simplicity. All of this adds up to something more than just a list of facts. It creates a picture of a country that operates on extremes, of scale, of nature, of isolation, and of quiet magnitude. Canada doesn't overwhelm you with density or intensity. It overwhelms you with space, with depth, with the realization that there is far more there than most people will ever see. And that might be the most unbelievable fact of all. Not just what Canada is, but how much of it remains untouched, unexplored, and quietly existing at the edge of human awareness. And even after all of that, Canada still has a way of revealing new layers the longer you look at it. Details that don't just expand its size, but deepen its complexity. Because what makes Canada so fascinating isn't just how much there is, but how differently that much behaves depending on where you are. It's a country where geography doesn't just shape the land. It shapes time, culture, movement, and even the way people think about distance and isolation. Consider how seasons transform the same place into something almost unrecognizable. In winter, large parts of Canada freeze into a landscape of ice and stillness, where lakes become solid ground and temporary roads, called ice roads, appear across frozen water. These aren't small paths. They're critical supply routes that connect remote communities, especially in the north. In regions near Northwest Territories, entire supply chains depend on these seasonal roads. But when the ice melts, those routes disappear completely, cutting off direct access and forcing reliance on air transport. It's a kind of seasonal geography that most countries never experience, a landscape that literally rewrites itself every year. Spring brings another dramatic shift. Snowmelt feeds rivers, swelling them to powerful levels that reshape banks and flood plains. In areas along the Red River, flooding has historically been a major challenge, leading to the construction of massive floodways and diversion systems. These aren't just engineering projects. They're responses to a geography that operates on cycles far larger than any single season. And these lakes aren't just large. They're extreme in their own ways. Great Slave Lake, for instance, is one of the deepest lakes in North America, plunging to depths that feel more oceanic than inland. Standing at its edge, it's easy to forget that you're not near a sea. That's a recurring theme in Canada, features that blur the line between categories we normally take for granted. Even the country's rivers can behave in unexpected ways. The St. Lawrence River, for example, serves as a massive natural highway, connecting the Great Lakes to the Atlantic Ocean and enabling one of the most important shipping routes in the world. But it's not just a river, it's an economic lifeline, a historical corridor, and a defining geographic feature all at once. Then there are Canada's islands, thousands upon thousands of them, scattered across its lakes and along its coasts. Some are large enough to host entire communities, while others remain completely uninhabited. Baffin Island alone is larger than many countries, yet it remains sparsely populated, dominated by rugged terrain and Arctic conditions. It's another example of how Canada constantly challenges expectations. What would be a major nation elsewhere is just one piece of its geography. And hidden within all of this are places that feel almost impossible. Sinkholes, underground rivers, and cave systems exist in regions like Nahanni National Park Reserve, where the landscape conceals as much as it reveals. These features remind us that Canada's geography isn't just horizontal. It extends vertically as well, both above and below the surface. Even sound behaves differently in such vast spaces. In remote northern areas, the absence of human noise creates an almost complete silence, broken only by wind, water, or wildlife. It's the kind of silence that feels unfamiliar, even unsettling to those used to constant background noise. Geography, in this sense, doesn't just shape what you see, it shapes what you hear and what you don't. And then there's the idea of remoteness. Not just physical, but psychological. In a country where entire regions have no roads connecting them to the rest of the nation, distance becomes more than a number. It becomes a lived experience. Flying into a remote community in Nunavut isn't just travel, it's a transition into a completely different way of life, where supplies are limited, weather dictates schedules, and the environment demands respect. But perhaps the most fascinating aspect of Canada's geography is how much of it remains unchanged. In a world where development has transformed most landscapes, Canada still holds vast areas that look much as they did centuries ago. Forests remain dense, rivers flow freely, and ecosystems operate with minimal human interference. It's not untouched, but it's closer to untouched than almost anywhere else on Earth. This is what gives Canada its unique presence on the global stage. It's not just a country with impressive statistics, it's a place that quietly holds some of the planet's most important natural systems. Its forests absorb carbon, its freshwater supports ecosystems far beyond its borders, and its sheer scale provides a kind of environmental buffer that few other nations can offer. And yet, despite all of this, Canada doesn't feel overwhelming in the way you might expect. It doesn't demand attention, it rewards curiosity. The more you learn about it, the more it expands, revealing new extremes, new contradictions, and new reasons to be amazed. In the end, Canada isn't defined by a single fact or even 50 facts. It's defined by the feeling those facts create when you put them together, a sense that you're looking at something far larger, far deeper, and far more complex than you initially realized. A hidden giant, not because it's unnoticed, but because it's impossible to fully grasp all at once.